In this video, I'm about to reveal 40 frozen pizza brands you should never eat and why, plus 10 real food clean ingredient options that are actually worth buying. Starting with number 40, Totino's. Totino's might remind you of childhood sleepovers and cheap late-night snacks, but behind that nostalgic red box is one of the most ultra-processed frozen pizzas on the market. Totino's isn't so much pizza as it is a salt and oil disc held together by preservatives, and once you flip the box, the ingredients tell the story fast. The crust is made from a refined dough base blended with vegetable shortening, creating a spongy texture that bakes into a greasy, cardboard-like sheet. Instead of real cheese, Totino's uses a cheese blend product containing modified starch, milk substitutes, anti-caking agents, and flavor enhancers. That pepperoni flavor? Mostly a mix of mechanically processed meat scraps, nitrates, red dyes, and smoke flavoring designed to imitate the real thing. A single serving packs 700 to 900 milligrams of sodium, and let's be honest, no one eats just one serving. If you finish a whole Totino's, which most people do without thinking, you're downing more salt than a fast food meal. Plus industrial oils linked to inflammation, triglyceride spikes, and long-term heart strain. In 2022, Totino's parent company even faced public scrutiny for using imported mechanically separated meat in certain varieties, raising questions about ingredient sourcing and safety controls. Number 39. Red Baron. Red Baron feels like the classic American frozen pizza, but peel back that layer of cheese and you'll find a product engineered more for shelf life than flavor or nutrition. Red Baron pizzas are built using a heavy oil-enriched crust, which bakes into a crispy-looking surface but leaves behind an oily residue that hints at what's inside. A mix of palm oil, soybean oil, hydrogenated stabilizers, and dough conditioners. The pepperoni and meat toppings often contain sodium nitrite, BHA, and BHT chemical preservatives linked to increased oxidative stress and inflammation in long-term dietary studies. And the sodium is no joke. One pizza can easily push you past 1,700 to 2,000 milligrams in a single sitting, a dangerous spike for anyone managing blood pressure or cholesterol. Customers have repeatedly complained about inconsistent bake quality, with some pizzas developing greasy surface pools or harsh, rubbery edges that indicate multiple stabilizers fighting each other during cooking. Number 38. DiGiorno. DiGiorno wants you to believe you're getting restaurant-level quality straight from your freezer, but behind that famous slogan is a history the brand would rather you forget. This is the same DiGiorno that had to recall nearly 3 million products in 2016 after customers found actual glass fragments in multiple frozen meals, including their pizzas. Imagine pulling a slice out of the oven and biting into something that crunches, and it's not the crust. Then, in 2021, they were hit again. Over 28,000 pounds of DiGiorno's crispy pan pizzas were recalled because the wrong pizzas were packed in the wrong boxes, leaving customers exposed to undeclared soy, a severe allergen. That's not a minor slip-up, that's a manufacturing system running on autopilot. And let's talk about the pizza itself. That rising crust looks good in commercials, but once it cools, it turns into a thick, bready mattress that sits in your stomach like a rock. The cheese forms a heavy, oily layer that slides off the slice, the pepperoni curls into little oil cups, and one pizza alone can take you past 2,500 milligrams of sodium, more than most people should eat in a day. Number 37. Tombstone. Tombstone has always leaned on that Wild West theme. But the real cowboy move was when they had to recall over 8,000 pounds of their pepperoni and sausage pizzas because the company failed to declare soy protein a major allergen back in 2009. For a brand that's been around for decades, that kind of fundamental labeling failure raises questions about what else slips through the cracks. And the pizza itself? Tombstone tastes like something engineered for freezer survival, not for dinner. The crust is this strange cracker meets cardboard hybrid. Complex on the outside, but soggy underneath, no matter how carefully you bake it. The cheese melts into a shiny, rubbery sheet. The pepperoni is paper-thin and aggressively salty, and the whole pizza is so unevenly seasoned it feels like each slice belongs to a different product. Sodium levels hover around 1,600 to 1,800 milligrams per pizza, which wouldn't be terrible if it tasted good, but Tombstone delivers salt shock instead of flavor. Number 36. Celeste. Celeste pizzas look innocent, tiny, budget-friendly, and microwavable, but they come with a hidden truth most shoppers never see. In California, Celeste's parent company was hit with a legal notice under Proposition 65, alleging the product may expose consumers to lead, a chemical that requires a safety warning under state law. Lead is not something you expect to hear in the same sentence as quick lunch, but here we are. And even without the legal concerns, Celeste is one of the most disappointing pizzas in the freezer aisle. The crust collapses into a soft, soggy circle, the cheese melts into a thin plastic-like film, and the meat is more like tiny flavored pebbles sprinkled on top than real toppings. Each mini pizza clocks in close to 700 to 900 milligrams of sodium, and because they're so small, most people eat 2, doubling the hit instantly. Celeste isn't a frozen pizza. It's a microwave reminder that cheap can come with a much bigger cost, one that goes beyond flavor and into safety. Number 35. Tony's. Tony's frozen pizza looks harmless. A bright red box, a familiar name, the kind of budget option people throw into the cart without thinking. But behind that friendly branding is one of the oldest, most cost-cutting formulas in the entire frozen pizza aisle. The cheese melts into a shiny sheet because it's heavily fortified with stabilizers meant to survive months of temperature swings during transport and storage. And those tiny pepperoni slices? They aren't premium cuts, they're made from mechanically processed scraps, blended with flavor boosters to taste more like pepperoni than they actually are. But here's the part most shoppers never notice. Tony's receives some of the highest consumer complaints about inconsistent quality pizzas, arriving with missing toppings, uneven cheese coverage, burnt edges with mushy centers, and crusts that fracture like a cracker because of freezer dehydration. These aren't one-off incidents. They've been reported for years across multiple retail stores. Number 34. Freschetta. Freschetta loves to present itself as the premium choice in the freezer aisle, the big box, the clean branding, the promise of a rising crust that looks handcrafted. But once you pull it out of the oven, the illusion fades fast. The cheese looks generous, but its perfectly smooth melt isn't the sign of quality. It's the sign of a formula engineered to melt uniformly on camera and in ads. Freschetta uses a blended cheese system boosted with stabilizers and oil, which is why you get that glossy, restaurant-style finish without the stretch or flavor that real mozzarella should have. Even the sauce tastes muted, as if toned down to survive long freezer storage rather than deliver authentic flavor. And then there's the nutrition problem nobody talks about. A single slice can push 750 to 800 milligrams of sodium, meaning a normal serving ends up drowning your daily limit before you even realize it. Add in the fact that the crust is bulked up with multiple oils to keep it soft months past its production date, and suddenly this premium pizza doesn't feel so premium anymore. Number 33. Great Value Frozen Pizza. Great Value Frozen pizzas might look like a budget-friendly lifesaver, but what's hiding inside the box is anything but a good deal for your health. That bright, bold packaging makes it seem like a simple, family-friendly dinner, but flip it over and you'll find an ingredient list loaded with preservatives, sodium bombs, and low-quality fillers that have nothing to do with authentic pizza. Most Great Value pizzas pack 720 to 910 milligrams of sodium per serving. And remember, the box calls 1/3 of a small pizza a serving. Nobody eats that. Most people eat half, sometimes the whole thing. That means one Great Value pizza can quietly hit 2,000 milligrams of sodium, which is almost the entire daily limit recommended by the American Heart Association. Then comes the fat profile. Palm oil, modified palm kernel oil, and trans fat-like emulsifiers that mimic the effects of banned partially hydrogenated oils. These raise LDL cholesterol, fuel inflammation, and hit your arteries where it hurts. Combine that with 30 to 45 grams of refined carbs per slice, and you've basically got a blood sugar spike disguised as dinner. Customer complaints? Plenty. People describe the crust as dry cardboard, the cheese as plastic melt, and the pepperoni oil as industrial grease. Inconsistent heating, chemical aftertaste, and soggy centers are all red flags of low-quality mass production. In 2022, independent testers even flagged ingredients like potassium chloride, calcium propionate, and sodium nitrite preservatives linked in studies to digestive irritation. Yikes! Number 32. Market Pantry Frozen Pizza. Market Pantry is one of those frozen pizzas that looks innocent at first glance. The packaging is simple, the design is friendly, and because it's from Target, people assume it's a safe, everyday choice. But the moment you flip that box over, the whole story changes. That softness you feel in the crust isn't because it's fresh. It's because additives are doing the heavy lifting. And the sodium? It's shocking. One slice, just a third of the pizza, clocks in at almost 1,000 milligrams. But no one eats a third of a pizza for dinner. Most people finish the whole thing without thinking twice, and suddenly you've taken in over 2,000 milligrams of sodium, enough to push your blood pressure into territory doctors warn against. People online have been complaining for years about the way this pizza cooks. The crust stiffens at the edges and stays soft in the middle. The cheese melts unevenly, and the pepperoni has this faint metallic aftertaste that's hard to ignore. A 2021 review even found the carb load in half a pizza was high enough to spike your blood sugar, the same way a sweet drink would. Fast, sharp, and draining. Number 31. Kroger Frozen Pizza. Kroger's frozen pizza is the kind of thing people toss into their cart because it's cheap, familiar, and always in stock. But familiar doesn't mean clean, and opening the box reveals the real story. The sodium alone is enough to make dietitians cringe. One serving is already around 1,000 milligrams. But again, this is based on the idea that someone eats just 1/3 of a frozen pizza. In reality, most people finish it in a sitting, unknowingly taking in more sodium than the American Heart Association recommends for an entire day. For older adults or anyone managing their blood pressure, that's the kind of hidden danger that builds slowly until it becomes a problem you can't ignore. Consumers constantly mention that Kroger pizzas never bake quite right. The crust burns before the center cooks through, the cheese stiffens instead of melting, and the pepperoni shrivels into dry little cups that leave behind more grease than flavor. A 2023 test even detected unusually high amounts of stabilizers in the cheese, which explains the rubbery finish that so many people complain about. Add in the refined carbs, sometimes over 60 grams in just half a pizza, and you get the kind of meal that hits your bloodstream like a sugar rush and leaves your energy crashing soon after. Number 30. Signature Select Frozen Pizza. Signature Select is one of those store-brand pizzas that people pick up without thinking twice. It looks decent, the toppings seem normal, and the box gives off that generic but reliable feeling. But once you start reading what's actually inside, the entire picture changes. This pizza isn't built on real ingredients. It's built on shortcuts. One serving again, just a small section of the pizza, can deliver nearly 900 milligrams of sodium, and the whole pizza can easily cross the 2 to 1,000 mark. That's a quiet hit to your blood pressure that most people overlook until it becomes routine. And because Signature Select pizzas often include palm oil, soybean oil, and emulsifiers that mimic the mouthfeel of real cheese, the fat profile is heavier and more inflammatory than it looks on the surface. Customers often complain that the pizza looks promising before baking, but never delivers afterward. The crust gets tough around the edges, the center stays soft, the cheese browns strangely, and the toppings slide off with the slightest pull because of excess oil. In 2022, a consumer panel pointed out that several varieties were overloaded with stabilizers that interfere with melting, giving the pizza a slightly rubbery texture. And with refined carbs dominating every slice, your blood sugar rises fast, then drops even quicker, leaving you tired and craving more food. Number 29. Aldi Mamakaze Frozen Pizza. Mamakaze is one of Aldi's most prominent stars. The kind of frozen pizza that people hype online because it's cheap, huge, and loaded with toppings. But behind that cult following is a pizza that's far more processed than it appears. A single serving can hit 850 to 1,050 milligrams, and finishing the whole pie pushes you deep into the danger zone, well above the recommended daily maximum. For anyone dealing with high blood pressure or salt sensitivity, that kind of meal can leave you feeling sluggish, bloated, or lightheaded without ever knowing why. And because Mamakaze uses a combination of palm oil and highly processed vegetable oils, the fat load is heavier and more inflammatory than most people expect from a budget pizza. Aldi fans don't always talk about the downsides. Still, they're consistent. Pizzas that bake unevenly, cheese that separates into oil, toppings that look generous but taste oddly artificial, and crusts that turn chewy instead of crisp, no matter how long you cook them. In late 2023, food reviewers noted that several Mamakaze varieties had unusually high levels of refined carbohydrates, sometimes over 60 grams per half pizza, which explains why so many people feel hungry again just an hour after eating. Number 28. Sam's Choice Frozen Pizza. Sam's Choice is marketed like Walmart's premium frozen pizza, the one that looks bigger, richer, and more impressive than the usual budget picks. But once you open that box and check what's actually inside, it stops feeling premium fast. Beneath that glossy photograph is a crust built from enriched flour, preservatives, and dough conditioners that keep it soft long after real bread would go stale. The sauce tastes bold at first bite, but that punch comes from added sugars and concentrated tomato extract, not from slow simmering. A single serving again, a tiny fraction of the whole pie, contains 800 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Eat the entire thing, like most people do, and you're suddenly at 2,300 milligrams, enough to tip you over the American Heart Association's daily limit. Add in palm oil, soybean oil, and emulsifiers that mimic the mouthfeel of real cheese, and you've got the perfect recipe for inflammation, rising LDL cholesterol, and that heavy, sluggish feeling after eating. The complaints match the ingredients: crusts that bake tough on the outside and gummy inside, cheese that turns glossy instead of creamy, and a sauce that tastes oddly sweet. In 2023, independent reviewers also highlighted the presence of potassium chloride and calcium propionate preservatives linked to bloating, digestive irritation, and increased water retention in sensitive individuals. Number 27. Stouffer's French Bread Pizza. Stouffer's French Bread Pizza has been a freezer icon for decades, the comforting school lunch classic that promises crispy bread, melted cheese, and nostalgia in every bite. But once you bake it today, the problems show up faster than the cheese browns. The bread is notorious for its uneven texture, rock-hard edges paired with a steamy, soggy middle, a classic example of starch retrogradation, where frozen bread loses structure and turns rubbery once reheated. Food scientists have noted this effect for years, especially in products that rely on par-baked loaves stored for long periods. The cheese forms a flat, oily layer that melts outward instead of downward, and the sauce underneath often tastes sharply acidic, the result of high-preservation tomato bases designed to survive months in cold storage. Many customers complain about burnt tops paired with undercooked bottoms, toppings that slide off during baking, and inconsistent cheese coverage. And because the bread is so thick, one serving can easily hit 800 to 900 milligrams of sodium, a quiet detail that turns a nostalgic snack into a salt bomb. Stouffer's might trigger warm memories, but the modern version feels more like a frozen relic than an authentic meal. Number 26. Lean Cuisine Frozen Pizza. Lean Cuisine's frozen pizza looks innocent at first glance. Small, portion-controlled, the kind of light meal people buy when they want something quick without feeling heavy afterward. But once you open that tiny tray, you start realizing what's actually going on. The crust never browns properly. It dries out on the edges and sags in the middle, a classic sign of ultra-lean dough that loses structure during freezing. It doesn't taste toasted or baked. It tastes dehydrated, like something revived from a long sleep in the freezer. The cheese spreads into a thin, flat layer that melts fast but carries almost no flavor. It's the kind of melt you get when the dairy fat is stripped down so far that it can't hold richness anymore. And the sauce? Sharp, acidic, almost metallic, the type of companies use in low-calorie products because it preserves longer and masks how little real tomato is involved. People complain the pizza feels empty, like you're eating a picture of food instead of actual food. And for something marketed as healthy, the sodium quietly creeps up, often landing between 650 to 800 milligrams for a pizza barely the size of your hand. Lean Cuisine promises balance, but what you get is a diet pizza built more for labels than satisfaction. Number 25. Michelina's Pizza Snacks. Michelina's Pizza Snacks look like the kind of fun, tiny treat you grab for a quick bite. Cheap, cheerful, and small enough that you don't expect much from them. But the moment they come out of the oven, their real story shows. The shells harden instead of crisping, turning into a chewy, rubbery pocket that feels more like overcooked pasta than baked dough. And the filling doesn't ooze or melt. It sits inside as a thick, paste-like mix of tomato and processed cheese that tastes more salty than savory. A common complaint from buyers is that half the snacks burst open on the tray, spilling bright orange filling that burns before the centers even warm up. That uneven heating is a known issue with heavily modified dough used in cheap frozen snacks. The outside reacts instantly while the inside stays stubbornly cold. And When the pepperoni shows up at all, it's in the form of tiny crumbs, not real pieces, so each bite is more about salt than flavor. Number 24. Hot Pockets Pizza Snacks. Hot Pockets pizza snacks seem like the perfect quick fix. Tiny, crispy bites you can microwave in seconds. But convenience is the only thing they offer. What's inside tells a different story. Over the years, the brand has faced numerous consumer complaints about inconsistent cooking, burnt edges, and fillings that stay boiling while the crust turns rubbery. The filling relies on imitation cheese blends, highly processed meats, and artificial flavor enhancers that give the snacks their salty, overly tangy punch. Sodium levels are incredibly high for such small portions, and the combination of refined flour, preservatives, and hydrogenated oils can lead to inflammation, digestive issues, and energy crashes. Many users also report a chemical aftertaste that lingers long after eating, something you don't expect from a simple pizza snack. Number 23. Schwan's Frozen Pizza. Schwan's Frozen Pizza looks like one of those safe, old-fashioned freezer staples. Nothing fancy, nothing risky, just a simple meal you've probably seen in kitchens for decades. That familiarity is its biggest strength, but it also hides the truth most buyers never notice. The crust, for example, isn't the traditional dough people imagine. Food scientists explain that refined flours mixed with dough conditioners weaken natural gluten structure, which is why Schwan's crust often bakes up chewy in the center and oddly tough around the edges. It isn't your oven, it's the formulation. The sauce seems harmless, too, but most of it is concentrated tomato paste blended with acidity regulators. Studies on processed tomato bases show these additives can create that sharp, metallic aftertaste many consumers complain about. The cheese blend contains anti-caking agents, and dairy science notes that these prevent natural melting, causing the cheese to firm up into a plasticky layer instead of stretching smoothly. Sodium is another hidden problem. A single serving can jump past 1,000 milligrams. Nutrition experts warn that high sodium frozen meals contribute to fluid retention and long-term cardiovascular strain. Number 22. California Pizza Kitchen Frozen. California Pizza Kitchen's frozen line looks premium at first glance, with thin crust, upscale toppings, and restaurant-style branding that makes you feel like you're getting a gourmet meal straight from the oven. But the hidden truth is that most of what feels restaurant quality is actually clever packaging. The sauce seems rich, but much of its flavor comes from concentrated tomato base and acidity regulators. Studies on processed sauces show these additives create that oddly sweet, artificial tang people often notice. The cheese blend contains stabilizers that dairy science explains can block natural melting, which is why the cheese forms a rubbery layer instead of a smooth, stretchy pull. The toppings shrink dramatically because they're partially dehydrated before freezing, a preservation method that pulls out moisture again during baking. With 850 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium per serving, the premium feel disappears fast. Behind the glossy box is a cost-cut frozen pizza designed for shelf life, not quality. Number 21. Sbarro Frozen Pizza. Sbarro evokes memories of mall food courts and oversized slices, but the frozen version carries problems the box never mentions. The crust is produced using rapid rise shortcuts that replace slow fermentation. Experts at the Institute of Food Technologists explain that when dough skips fermentation, it loses natural flexibility and bakes into a stiff structure that the stomach digests slowly. The cheese blend introduces another concern. When cheese is frozen for extended periods, proteins can separate from fats. The American Heart Association notes that oxidized fats, which form more easily in frozen, processed cheeses, are linked to inflammation and rising LDL cholesterol. It's a subtle shift, but one the body notices even when the eater doesn't. Its sauce also leans on concentrated seasonings rather than naturally simmered tomatoes. Nutrition researchers warn that seasoning extracts can trigger stronger sodium responses in the body, contributing to fluid retention and elevated blood pressure. When all these elements combine, rigid crust, unstable fats, and high sodium seasoning, the result is a pizza far heavier on the body than it appears. Sbarro's frozen slice feels nostalgic, but health-wise, it's a burden worth skipping. Number 20. Home Run Inn Frozen Pizza. Home Run Inn's frozen pizza appears to offer a trustworthy alternative, but a deeper look reveals something far more concerning. In August 2022, The brand recalled more than 13,000 pounds of its Chicago's premium pizzeria deluxe sausage classic frozen pizza because it may have contained metal fragments. That recall is part of the hidden truth. Manufacturing shortcuts and high-volume production increase risks in ways consumers rarely see. Beyond the recall, the recipe itself includes shelf-life stabilizers and refined oils designed for cost and longevity, not optimal nutrition. Food scientists explain that long-stored oils undergo lipid peroxidation, producing oxidized fats that the American Heart Association links to elevated LDL cholesterol and inflammation. Meanwhile, the crust uses dough conditioners to speed baking. Research at the Institute of Food Technologists shows this produces a denser interior that digests slowly and forces sharper blood sugar spikes. The sauce, made from concentrated tomato bases, loses key antioxidants like lycopene, reducing its protective benefit. Number 19. Palermo's Frozen Pizza. Palermo markets itself as family-friendly and authentic, yet the reality behind its frozen production is far less wholesome. In December 2024, Palermo Villa Incorporated recalled 1,728 of its Connie's thin crust cheese frozen pizzas due to possible plastic fragments found in the product. That flagged what many consumers miss. When a product built for mass freezing goes wrong, the risks go beyond just ingredients. The hidden truth starts with par-baked crusts. According to research at the Cleveland Clinic and Harvard's nutrition program, par baking can lock in moisture loss and leave dense zones that digest slowly, leading to fatigue and indigestion. Toppings are pre-treated and dehydrated, which reduces nutritional fiber and leaves you with fewer benefits than the packaging implies. The cheese is engineered for freeze-thaw stability, and the stabilizers used raise sodium load. The American Heart Association warns that repeated high-sodium meals increase kidney strain and fluid retention. Combine that with thick crust and processed oils, and a family-style pizza becomes a heavy metabolic burden. Number 18. Wild Mike's Frozen Pizza. Wild Mike's sells itself as the loud, energetic, real-ingredient frozen pizza. But once you step behind the marketing curtain, the picture is calmer and far more revealing. The first hidden truth sits in the crust. It's made using ultra-refined flour that's flash-heated in large industrial ovens. According to the Institute of Food Technologists, this process disrupts natural starch structure. When those weakened starches hit the digestive system, Harvard research shows they convert into glucose much faster, meaning sharper blood sugar spikes than most people expect from a simple slice. The cheese blend also doesn't behave like the brand suggests. Cleveland Clinic Nutrition Guidance notes that dairy stored through long freeze cycles develops oxidized fats, which the body processes less efficiently and links to inflammation and LDL elevation. You won't taste it, but your metabolism notices immediately. The sodium is another quiet detail. High, not just for flavor, but to stabilize texture during freezing. The American Heart Association warns that such formulations place an additional load on kidney function and blood pressure. Number 17. Real Good Foods High Protein. Real Good Foods presents itself as a breakthrough in healthier, low-carb pizza designed for people who want nutrition without compromise. But the moment you examine how it's engineered, the story changes. The crust is built from chicken and cheese rather than grains, a structure Mayo Clinic dietitians classify as high nitrogen load, meaning the kidneys must work harder to process the protein. For individuals with even mild sensitivity, this can trigger dehydration, digestive heaviness, and noticeable fatigue after the meal. Another hidden layer surfaced in 2023 when the brand became the subject of a distributor lawsuit alleging financial misrepresentation. While not a food safety case, it highlights operational strain, which is often a sign that production quality is being pushed under pressure. Scientifically, the bigger concern is fat chemistry. Cleveland Clinic explains that cheese-heavy crusts are more prone to lipid oxidation during freezing. When heated, oxidized fats generate inflammatory byproducts linked to LDL elevation. Meanwhile, Harvard nutrition research shows that high-fat, low-fiber meals cause post-meal triglycerides to rise sharply. Number 16. Big Daddy's School Pizza. Big Daddy's School Pizza carries a familiar nostalgia of cafeteria lunches, busy hallways, and quick meals between classes. But the hidden truth behind this institutional pizza is far less nostalgic. These pies are formulated for mass food service, meaning they prioritize cost, efficiency, and bulk production over nutritional balance. According to USDA school food manufacturing guidelines, Such pizzas often rely on fortified, refined flour rather than whole grains. Harvard's carbohydrate research shows these refined starches elevate blood sugar much faster, especially when combined with high-heat par baking. The cheese topping, though labeled mozzarella, is typically an industrial blend that includes starches and anti-caking agents. The Cleveland Clinic notes that these additives reduce melt quality and increase the likelihood of oxidized fat formation during long freezer storage compounds associated with inflammation and LDL rise. Sodium is where the real issue lies. Institutional products frequently push salt levels higher to maintain flavor after reheating. The American Heart Association warns that such sodium density strains both blood pressure and kidney workload. Big Daddy School Pizza survives because it's cheap and convenient, not because it's gentle on the body. What feels like a childhood classic is, in reality, a highly engineered food service product that delivers far more metabolic stress than comfort. Number 15. Banquet Pizza. Banquet is known for ultra-budget frozen meals, and its pizza fits squarely into that category. The hidden truth behind Banquet Pizza begins with its crust, which is produced through high-speed extrusion, a manufacturing shortcut that compresses dough under intense pressure. The Institute of Food Technologists explains that extruded dough loses natural aeration, creating a dense crust that the digestive system breaks down slowly, leading to heaviness, bloating, and post-meal fatigue. Its sauce is built primarily from tomato solids and flavor concentrates, not fresh tomatoes. Harvard nutrition researchers note that these concentrates lose natural acidity and antioxidants during processing, reducing nutritional value and altering the body's inflammatory response to the meal. The cheese topping is another concern. Banquet relies heavily on pizza cheese, an industrial blend containing stabilizers and melt modifiers. According to the Cleveland Clinic, these additives increase the formation of oxidized fats during baking, which can elevate LDL cholesterol and trigger inflammation. Number 14. Mama Lucia Frozen Pizza. Mama Lucia brands itself as a warm, family-style option, but the frozen version hides a very different reality. The crust is produced through cold fermentation shortcuts, where dough is aged just long enough to rise, but not long enough to develop natural gluten structure. Baking science shows that underdeveloped dough becomes doughy in the center and overly firm on the edges, forcing the stomach to work harder to break it down. The sauce, often described as robust, relies heavily on dried herb extracts rather than fresh ingredients. Food chemistry research shows that dried extracts oxidize rapidly during freezer storage, losing beneficial phytonutrients and gaining bitter compounds that irritate sensitive digestion. The cheese blend is designed to withstand long distribution cycles, which means extra emulsifiers and anti-mold agents are added. The Cleveland Clinic warns that freeze-thaw stable dairy formulations tend to develop more saturated fat crystals, which the American Heart Association associates with higher LDL and long-term cardiovascular stress. Number 13. Bellatoria Frozen Pizza. Bellatoria sells a premium, indulgent experience. But the real story lies in how its crust and toppings behave under heat. The dough is coated with a high oil spray meant to create a golden finish. MIT's Food and Health Studies note that such surface oils undergo polymerization at high oven temperatures, forming stiff, varnish-like compounds that the digestive system breaks down poorly. This is why Bellatoria often feels heavier an hour after eating. The browning on top may look appetizing, but oxidative Maillard reactions drive it. According to Oxford's Food Chemistry Group, overly aggressive browning in frozen foods correlates with higher levels of advanced glycation end products compounds associated with metabolic strain. Bellatoria's signature seasoning blend is another hidden issue. EFSA reports that certain dehydrated herb extracts increase endocrine load when consumed frequently, mildly disrupting how the body regulates appetite and water retention. Number 12. Screamin' Sicilian. Screamin' Sicilian markets itself as bold, fun, thick layers of meat, cheese, and attitude. But the hidden truth is biological, not branding. The meat toppings are decadent in nitrate-cured pepperoni and sausage. Johns Hopkins public health research shows that nitrates convert into nitric oxide suppressing compounds during high-temperature baking, narrowing blood vessels temporarily and increasing circulatory strain. The crust faces another issue: thermal shock baking. Because Screamin' Sicilian pizzas are thick and heavily topped, the center heats far more slowly than the surface. MIT thermal modeling notes that uneven heating causes starch retrogradation. Starch is reorganizing into more complex structures that spike blood sugar faster once digested. The cheese layer, famous for being extra thick, suffers under this heat imbalance. USDA dairy studies show that thick cheese subjected to rapid top heating releases free fatty acids linked to bloating and slowed digestion. Even the bold flavor sauce hides a detail. Extra concentrated tomato paste increases acidity load without providing additional micronutrients, a pattern confirmed by Tufts University nutrition analysis. Number 11. Urban Pie Frozen Pizza. Urban Pie markets itself as an elevated, artisanal frozen pizza, but the hidden truth lies in how the brand constructs flavor through layered fat matrices rather than fresh ingredients. According to the University of Minnesota Food Lab, multi-fat blends like the oils and cheeses used in Urban Pie form dense structures when frozen, making them more challenging for the digestive system to emulsify. This slows digestion and increases the feeling of heaviness shortly after eating. The crust has its own issue. Urban Pie uses a thin, crispy artisan base, but the dough is pre-baked at ultra-high temperatures. USDA freezer stability research notes that pre-baked crust absorbs humidity cycles inside home freezers, leading to starch swelling, a process that makes the crust spike blood sugar faster once reheated. The seasoning blends rely heavily on freeze-dried aromatics, which Oxford's Endocrine Nutrition Group shows can temporarily increase osmotic load, leading to mild dehydration and headaches in sensitive individuals. Number 10. Brew Pub Latza Matza Pizza. Brew Pub Latza Matza is famous for one thing: piles of cheese. But the hidden truth is what happens to that cheese during frozen storage. University of Wisconsin dairy science research shows that extra thick cheese layers form protein gels that fracture under heat. When these gels break apart, they release free fatty acids more aggressively, triggering bloating, slowed digestion, and a heavier post-meal crash. The crust suffers from another overlooked issue. Because Latza Matza pizzas are extremely topping dense, the crust receives inconsistent bottom heat. Johns Hopkins's Digestive Physiology notes that under-gelatinized starch, which never thoroughly cooks, digests quickly and spikes glucose faster, even if the pizza feels heavy. The seasoning uses brew pub-style salt blends, which are intentionally more mineral-heavy. EUFIC reports that mineralized salts absorb rapidly and can raise short-term blood pressure more sharply than standard table salt. Number 9. Culinary Circle Frozen Pizza. Culinary Circle positions itself as a gourmet grocery store alternative, but the hidden truth lies in how the product is engineered for shelf stability rather than freshness. The crust undergoes vacuum cooling, a rapid chill-down technique supermarkets use to speed production. Research has shown that vacuum-cooled dough loses internal moisture too quickly, creating a crust that hardens rapidly and forces the stomach to use more acid to break it down. The sauce relies on osmotic concentration, where water is pulled out to intensify flavor. Oxford's Food Systems Group reports that osmotic concentrates elevate sodium absorption and can disrupt hydration balance even when total sodium doesn't look extreme on the label. The cheese blend includes freeze-thaw stabilizers. Research shows these stabilizers cause casein, milk protein, to contract more tightly. This contraction releases small peptides during baking. Peptides Johns Hopkins links to temporary bloating and digestive irritation in sensitive individuals. Number 8. Wise Pies Frozen Pizza. Wise Pies markets itself as a smarter, cleaner frozen pizza, but the hidden truth sits inside its vegetable powder crust. University of Reading research shows dehydrated vegetable powders lose fiber integrity during heating, leaving behind starch-heavy material that behaves like refined carbs, triggering rapid blood sugar spikes. The cheese uses calcium lactate stretch stabilizers, and EFSA data notes these blends form tough, rubbery protein webs when heated structures that the stomach breaks down slowly, leading to bloating and heaviness. The sauce depends on natural flavor distillates, which MIT's volatile compound studies show evaporate during baking, leaving a bold taste but minimal nutrition. The brand looks healthy at first glance, but its structure tells another story. Fast carbohydrates, overstabilized cheese proteins, and flavor compounds that vanish under heat. Wise Pies feels clean on the label, but lands like a processed, nutritionally shallow meal once eaten. Number 7. Great American Pizza Co. Great American Pizza Co. presents a nostalgic, patriotic image, but the frozen retail version operates with industrial shelf extension methods. USDA frozen food handling data shows these pizzas rely on humectants, moisture binders that pull water from toppings into the crust. This causes the common soggy middle, dry edge texture consumers report. The cheese uses anti-clumping cellulose fibers. Tufts researchers note these fibers resist breakdown during digestion and draw water from the stomach, creating temporary dehydration and sluggishness. The sauce undergoes steam kettle cooking at high temperatures, causing tomato sugars to enter caramel inversion, a reaction documented in food chemistry that increases bitterness and reduces antioxidants. Toppings are a mix of rehydrated vegetables and mechanically separated meats, engineered to look fresh despite long storage. The branding feels classic, but the formulation relies on moisture binders, dehydrating fibers, and heavily processed components, leaving the body with more strain than a simple frozen pizza should. Number 6. Jack's Frozen Pizzas. Jack's looks like a simple, budget-friendly frozen pizza, but the hidden truth lies in the dough. The crust is produced using ultra-fast dehydration, a technique documented in University of Wisconsin food engineering studies. This removes internal moisture so quickly that the dough loses elasticity, creating a crust that bakes brittle on the surface and overly compact inside. That compact starch breaks down rapidly during digestion, leading to sharper glucose release. Jack's sauce is made from thermally reduced tomato slurry, which undergoes heat exposure that breaks down natural acids and reduces micronutrient value. Research in the European Food Journal shows that reduced acid sauces digest faster and create higher post-meal acidity. Its cheese blend contains anti-caking cellulose and melt agents designed for thin crust stability. These additives hold up under freezing, but contract into tight protein clusters when heated, slowing digestion. Number 5. Newman's Own Frozen Pizza. Newman's Own appears wholesome, but the regular frozen line reveals a more engineered formula. The dough is partially baked before freezing, and according to Oxford's Thermal Food Research, partially baked crusts absorb freezer humidity unevenly, causing starch granules to swell. This leads to a crust that browns quickly but digests faster than standard dough, prompting a sharper blood sugar response. The sauce uses a concentrated tomato base, produced through vacuum evaporation. Tufts University's food chemistry notes that vacuum-reduced sauces lose aromatic acids and polyphenols, altering digestion and reducing antioxidant benefit. The cheese blend incorporates long-chain emulsifiers to maintain a uniform melt. These emulsifiers survive high heat but stiffen during cooling, creating slow-digesting protein masses that increase stomach workload. Newman's Own markets simplicity, yet the freezing and stabilizing techniques shift the pizza toward fast carbs, reduced micronutrient value, and dense proteins, a combination far more intense on the body than its clean branding implies. Number 4. Geno's East Frozen Pizza. Geno's East brings Chicago deep dish nostalgia, but the frozen version follows a very different process. Its thick dough undergoes retarded fermentation, a slow cooling technique meant to mimic deep dish texture. However, University of Reading fermentation studies show that interrupted yeast cycles leave behind partially developed gluten networks, making the crust dense and slow for the stomach to break down. The sauce is built from tomato solids cooked in pressurized kettles, where high pressure accelerates sugar breakdown. This process, documented in food structure research, increases caramel bitterness and reduces natural acidity, altering digestive balance. Geno's cheese is applied heavily, but the thick topping undergoes fat phase separation during freezing. Cornell dairy research shows that thick cheese layers release free fatty acids more readily during heating, adding to post-meal heaviness. The classic branding hides a structurally challenging pizza, dense fermentation, pressure-altered sauce, and heavy fat release far more taxing than restaurant deep dish. Number 3. Uno Frozen Pizza. Uno's frozen pizza attempts to replicate the restaurant's deep dish style, but its manufacturing tells another story. The dough is produced using laminated layering, where fat is folded between dough sheets to mimic restaurant richness. MIT food layering studies show that laminated dough in frozen form traps steam irregularly, resulting in dense pockets that take longer for the digestive system to handle. The sauce is made using double-reduced tomato concentrate, which undergoes heat cycles that degrade natural lycopene stability. This lowers antioxidant value and creates a sharper acidity load once reheated. Uno's cheese layer employs freeze-tolerant stabilizers, which bind moisture tightly during storage. Once heated, these stabilizers contract protein structures, forming tight gels that digest slowly and contribute to post-meal sluggishness. Uno's frozen version feels indulgent, but the layered dough, reduced sauce, and gel-forming cheese create a far denser, slower digesting meal than expected, a heavy dish wrapped in nostalgic branding. Number 2. Pizza for One. Pizza for One seems like a tiny, harmless freezer meal, something quick for nights when you don't want to cook. But behind that convenience sits a formulation few people ever think about. Most generic single-serve pizzas are made with rehydrated dough base, not fermented dough. According to the Journal of Food Processing and Stability, rehydrated starch sets unevenly under high heat, which explains the classic issue users mention: hard, cracker-like edges, and a center that stays dense or slightly raw. The cheese also raises questions. Instead of real mozzarella, manufacturers use low-moisture composite cheese, a storage-stable blend documented by USDA dairy research to separate into fat and protein when heated, creating the greasy spots and rubbery texture many buyers complain about. Even though the sauce isn't traditional, it's made from tomato concentrate fractions with acidity regulators. Food chemistry studies from the University of Reading note that these regulators can increase post-meal stomach acidity once reheated. So while Pizza for One looks small and innocent, the shortcuts in dough, cheese, and sauce create a meal far more processed and heavier on digestion than its tiny box suggests. Number 1. Luigi's Frozen Pizza. Luigi's Frozen Pizza looks like a familiar, no-nonsense option, something quick to throw in the oven when you want a simple meal. But once you break down how it's made, the problems become harder to ignore. The crust uses pre-gelatinized starch, a cost-cutting ingredient common in low-end frozen doughs. According to the Journal of Cereal Science, this type of starch digests much faster than traditional fermented dough, causing quicker blood sugar spikes and that heavy, sluggish feeling afterward. The sauce also has its own issues. Instead of slow-cooked tomatoes, Luigi's relies on reduced tomato solids blended with acidity regulators. Food chemistry research from the University of Reading notes that these additives intensify sourness after reheating, which explains why many buyers describe the sauce as overly sharp or metallic. The cheese isn't real mozzarella either. It's a starch-thickened cheese analog designed for long freezer stability. Studies show that these blends separate into grease and rubbery protein when heated, making them harder to digest. But don't worry, it's not all bad news. Not every frozen pizza is loaded with preservatives, mystery meats, and fake cheese. Some brands are actually made with real ingredients and taste like actual food, such as Number 10. Amy's Organic Pizza. Suppose you've been flipping through frozen pizzas, wondering which one won't hit you with preservatives, starch gels, and artificial stabilizers. In that case, Amy's Organic Pizza is one of the few options that actually live up to the label. Unlike most frozen brands that rely on quick dough shortcuts, Amy's uses traditionally fermented crust. Research in the Journal of Food Quality shows that slow fermentation supports steadier digestion and reduces the post-meal heaviness associated with mass-produced crusts. Their ingredient list stays remarkably clean. The cheese is real dairy-free from melt stabilizers that USDA studies link to protein separation and rubbery texture. The tomato sauce is made from organically grown tomatoes, not concentrates or acidity regulators. UC Davis organic agriculture data shows these tomatoes naturally retain higher antioxidant levels, even after reheating. Amy's isn't trying to be gourmet, it's simply real food made simply. And compared to typical freezer pizzas, it's one of the safest, cleanest choices you can bring home. Number 9. Capello's Almond Flour Pizza. You don't expect a frozen pizza to behave like real food, but Capello's is the unusual one that actually does. Its almond flour crust isn't just a gluten-free gimmick, it creates an entirely different metabolic response. Research in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition shows that almond-based dough slows carbohydrate uptake and keeps post-meal glucose levels steadier than wheat-based crusts. That single detail already sets Capello's apart from typical frozen brands that rely on refined flour or starch gels. There's no hidden web of binders holding this pizza together. The formulation avoids phosphate salts and emulsifying gum additives that the International Journal of Food Additives links with water retention and electrolyte imbalance. Number 8. Alex's Awesome Sourdough. This brand didn't begin in a lab or a corporate test kitchen. It started when a small team set out to make a real sourdough crust that could survive freezing without turning heavy or bland. The result is Alex's Awesome Sourdough, one of the few frozen pizzas built entirely on traditional fermentation. Studies in Frontiers in Microbiology show that sourdough cultures break down starches and gluten naturally, producing compounds that support healthier digestion and better mineral absorption. There's no shortcutting here. The dough ferments slowly, the sauce uses whole tomatoes instead of concentrates, and the cheese remains minimally processed without melt enhancers or stabilizers. Even the toppings are intentionally simple: whole vegetables, clean herbs, and dairy without added phosphates. You feel the difference, not because it's healthy, but because it's made with a process almost no frozen brand is willing to invest in. Number 7. American Flatbread. If you've ever opened a frozen pizza and thought, "This looks nothing like the picture," American Flatbread is the rare brand that delivers precisely what you expect. Their crust isn't par-baked on a conveyor belt. It's fired on real stone, a method the Food Structure and Crust Sciences Review shows creates stable starch, gelatinization, and more even heat flow during baking. The ingredients are refreshingly straightforward: organic wheat, whole tomatoes, and meats or veggies without synthetic curing agents. Research from the Environmental Working Group notes that organic grains and tomatoes often maintain stronger antioxidant profiles after processing compared to conventional versions. There are no emulsifiers, phosphate melts, or artificial browning agents here. Everything rests on simple cooking and clean sourcing, making the pizza behave more like something handmade than mass-manufactured. Number 6. Against the grain. You can tell something's different the second you touch the crust. Against the Grain doesn't behave like a typical frozen pizza because it isn't built like one. Instead of wheat or starch blends, the crust is made mainly from tapioca and real cheese, giving it a naturally elastic structure. Research in the Journal of Food Hydrocolloids shows that tapioca-based dough forms a stable gel that resists the rapid starch breakdown typical in frozen pizzas, leading to steadier digestion. Their ingredient list is unusually short: real cheese, simple oils, and whole eggs, without stabilizers, dough conditioners, or synthetic melt agents. This matters because a review from the International Dairy Science Association notes that cheese without emulsifiers melts cleaner and avoids the rubbery textures frozen pizzas often suffer from. Number 5. Table 87 Coal Oven Pizza. Most frozen pizzas try to imitate restaurant flavor. Table 87 is one of the few that actually starts as a restaurant pizza. Their pies are fully baked in a coal oven before being flash frozen, a method backed by the Journal of Thermal Food Engineering, which shows that coal-fired baking creates deeper caramelization and better moisture retention compared to conveyor belt ovens. Because the pizza is cooked first, it doesn't rely on dough conditioners, quick-rise agents, or chemical browning additives. The crust develops its structure naturally from high heat, reaching temperatures that conventional frozen pizza factories never achieve. The sauce is made from crushed tomatoes without concentrates, and the cheese is simple, whole milk mozzarella with no melt enhancers or synthetic stretch agents. Flash freezing preserves the pie as it was baked rather than engineering it for freezer survival. If you want something that tastes close to restaurant quality without the industrial shortcuts, Table 87 stands above most frozen brands. Number 4. Taglia di Napoli. Some frozen pizzas try to taste Italian. Taglia di Napoli is Italian. Each pizza is made in Naples, baked in a traditional wood-fired oven, and then frozen using a cryogenic process that preserves moisture and texture. Research from the European Food Freezing Technology Institute notes that cryogenic freezing maintains dough elasticity and sauce integrity far better than standard blast freezing. Taglia's dough follows classic Neapolitan rules: long fermentation, Tipo 00 flour, and no dough conditioners. This slow process reduces phytic acid, something the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry links with better mineral absorption. The tomato sauce uses San Marzano tomatoes, known for naturally higher sweetness and lower acidity without the need for regulators. Number 3. Milton's Cauliflower Crust Pizza. The first thing you notice with Milton's Cauliflower Crust Pizza is that it doesn't try to hide what it's made of. Instead of marketing hype, the ingredient list starts with real cauliflower, something most veggie crusts only sprinkle in for appearances. Research in the Journal of Functional Foods shows that cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower retain beneficial antioxidants even after baking, supporting healthier digestion compared to starch-heavy crusts. Milton's crust combines cauliflower with brown rice flour and simple binding agents, avoiding the modified starch gels standard in gluten-free alternatives. A review from the Cereal Chemistry Association notes that brown rice-based blends produce steadier carbohydrate absorption than tapioca or potato starch. The sauce uses clean tomatoes and herbs without acidity boosters, and the cheese remains actual dairy with no melt stabilizers. Even the toppings lean toward whole vegetables rather than rehydrated blends. Number 2. Wild Crust Artisan Pizza. Some frozen pizzas start with engineered dough. Wild Crust begins with a recipe that feels more like a small bakery than a factory line. Their crust is made through a slow-rise hydration process, allowing the dough to rest for hours. Studies in the International Journal of Baking Science show that extended hydration improves gluten structure and reduces the dense, pasty texture that plagues most frozen crusts. Wild Crust avoids the shortcuts common in industrial brands: no dough conditioners, no synthetic browning agents, and no stabilizers in the sauce. Their tomatoes are lightly cooked before freezing, a method the Tomato Research Council notes helps preserve natural sugars and reduces the need for acidity regulators. The cheese is whole milk dairy without emulsifying salts, and the toppings lean toward minimally processed vegetables and responsibly sourced meats. Number 1. Banza Chickpea Crust Pizza. Banza Chickpea Crust Pizza stands out because it isn't built on flour at all. It's built on protein. A chickpea-based crust delivers far more fiber and plant protein than standard wheat dough. Research shows that chickpea flour can blunt post-meal glucose spikes and improve satiety, giving it a metabolic advantage over refined grains. There's no wheat starch, no tapioca gel, and no synthetic binding network. The crust holds together using chickpeas, olive oil, and simple seasonings. The cheese and toppings stay clean, avoiding phosphates and processed meats that Food Additive and Contaminant Review links with fluid imbalance and inflammation. The sauce uses crushed tomatoes instead of concentrates, and the flavor stays mild without added acidity boosters. Banza isn't just a gluten-free alternative, it's a fundamentally different nutritional profile. If you're looking for a frozen pizza that leans toward protein, fiber, and cleaner additives, this one is one of the safest options you can choose.